Hello everyone, out here working on my 2013 F250, and issue is it's got a no crank. The dash lights and stuff are coming on. I found one dead battery. Come to find out that of course some of the functions work off one battery, some work off the other, some work off both. So evidently the stuff I'm seeing is still lit up. It's coming off the good battery still. So come to find out that these trucks, the starters, are very sensitive to voltage and bad batteries. So I don't know if bad battery caused my starter to take a hit or not, but anyhow, I replaced the one battery and it still has the same condition. So I'm at the point of diagnosing the starter at this point. So I saw a video on YouTube where a guy mentioned taking the inner fender liner out to get access, which was a huge, great suggestion. He didn't actually say take it all the way out. He just mentioned a couple bolts to take loose and pull it down out of the way. I'm a backyard mechanic. I'm working out here in my gravel driveway. I want it out of the way. So it was just a couple extra bolts and got the thing completely out of the way. I'm sure that's something everybody could figure out, but do yourself a favor right up front, take it completely out of the way and get it out of the way. When you do, there's lots of room to work in here. For example, we get on in here and it's gonna be a little bit too dark, but that is the starter. We'll reach up from the bottom with my hand right here. This is the starter, I'm touching it. The bolt that looked so difficult to get from the bottom, which when I was thinking about taking this off from the bottom, is gonna be super easy accessible up here on top. So, more to come. Okay, so I have a flashlight in here so you can see the starter now. Very easy to get to. Two posts. This one on top is the one that comes from the battery. This one down below here, a very small one, is the one that comes from the starter. The signal wire tells the starter to engage, which engages the solenoid while it's cranking the motor on the starter. Very simple test. I found a place where I got a good ground for my test light. And simply set to this first big post, and you should see test light come on. Yes, we do. That tells us that we've got good voltage from, or good power anyhow, from the battery to the starter. The next thing, I'm waiting on my assistant to come out, and we're going to do the same thing, except we're going to touch the small post while she's going to crank and see if we're getting cranking. And then I'm going to go back to the first post, the big one, while she's cranking and make sure that light stays bright and we're getting full voltage there and there's not a drop off. At that point, I can assume that the starter has power and it has signal to start, so the issue has to be either the starter or the solenoid itself, so I'll go ahead and remove the starter. Alright, so marginal success. I guess we're narrowing things down. I had my helper come out, and when she hit the crank button, we had, of course, we maintained good connectivity on this upper one. It still showed I had battery voltage here. I went to this lower post to see if we had connection there and had power there, and when she was cranking, I actually had nothing. So at that point, I did the old school test. I laid my screwdriver across this top post, this wire right here, and I just went straight down and gave it a bump to that trigger post, and it actually cranked. So that tells me that the problem may not be here. I'm gonna take that connection loose and make sure that there's just not some gum or dirt or film or corrosion or something built up between that wire, to make sure that it's not a condition where it's actually getting power to the wire, but it's not making it through the post where it's bolted on. And at that point, if we still don't have power here and the wire itself doesn't have power, we'll start tracing it back. All right, so we disconnected both. I had them both hanging down here. You see the large one out in the middle of air. Anytime you're working with electricity, whether it's DC or AC voltage, whatever, you got to protect yourself. So I found that that wire kind of laid there in midair very well. It didn't have any kind of strain on it to try to pull it to a ground. Best practice would probably be taping it up with some non-conductive electrical tape, something of that nature, to keep it from arcing. But since I was going to hook the batteries back up to do this last test, I didn't, because I felt like it was laying there really good. It wasn't going to touch anything. So this is the small wire I disconnected. For my final test, I used the test light on here and had her go to crank position, and it had nothing. I suspected this kind of looked like maybe a bush fix, or at first it looked like a crimp connection to me, but at closer examination it looks like a factory connection. But in the meantime, I went ahead and probed the wire here above to make sure there wasn't a bad connection in here and that the wire actually was getting energized. So I had nothing here either. So at this point, I'm going to hook all this back up and change the second battery, as my man Tom Bodette instructed me to do. He said change both batteries. He said these things are very sensitive to batteries. So even though the second battery tested well, I'm going to go ahead and change it. And if that doesn't fix it, I will probably be taking this to Tom at Diesel Works in Andersonville, Tennessee. The guys have done fantastic work for me up to this point. And if I can't figure something out here, I've already checked all the fuses and relays also, by the way. There's in the power distribution box in the engine bay, there is 2 fuses. I believe it was this number 10 fuse, or this 10 amp fuse right here. This one is for the starter circuit, and I believe this 40 amp my thumb is touching right here was also for the starter circuit. This relay is for the starter circuit, and one of these two, I think it was this relay right here, was for the starter circuit. So I checked all those. I did find a little bit of corrosion underneath the 2 relays. That might be something I need to investigate further. I might check the relays and see if they're fairly cheap. I might just go ahead and put a relay in it, or I might try to swap a relay from a different position here, because they all look to be the same, and see if that remedies anything. Yeah, I hate these little fuses with the little tops that come off. Anyway, that's where I'm at. One final note before putting the new battery in. I did a load test with my old school load tester here on the battery in suspicious battery. When hooked up, it was right at or just below 12 volts. When I put a load on it, it kind of drops down to just above 10, in that neighborhood. So normally I'd consider that a good battery, but with everything on these trucks that's electrical, that could be part of the problem. So everything's computerized and stuff on these trucks, very sensitive to voltages. Came back over and tested this battery. This battery stays above 12 volts throughout the test. So we're gonna go get another battery and see what that does. Okay, so we're in my truck. I put the other battery in, and it still did not want to start off the key switch. Yeah, didn't want to start off the key switch, so as a last-ditch effort, I went ahead and crossed over the starter solenoid, and the truck started up. Now, I've now got the little yellow wrench right here. I guess it's like service engine soon, get it checked out. So I'm thinking at this point, this is probably beyond the scope of my diagnostic abilities. So this truck is going to be going to Diesel Works in Andersonville, Tennessee. Hopefully I can save a tow bill by just jumping over the solenoid when time comes to deliver it to Tom and the guys and drive it over there. So I know it'll start, I know it'll run. What I don't know is if it'll drive up the road. I know how weird these things are with computer controlled stuff. I'm hoping to. Right now I've not tried to move it because I still have the passenger front tire off, because it makes it easy to get into to jumper it over. So what I'll probably do is shut the truck down, get a hold of Tom. Hey Tom, you got one coming at you. And then when I know it's okay to go ahead and take the truck over and deliver it, deliver the truck to him, he'll get it started, put the wheel and tire on, and then take off with it. So maybe I'll have a good resolution of this in the end. We'll see.